Alright guys, welcome back. This is the third installment of my Illustrator CC tutorial on how to illustrate a car. And in this tutorial, we're going to talk about using the Pathfinder dialog box and how to use it to create one intricate shape instead of layering several shapes to get the same effect. The example that we're going to use today are the windows. And this may be a tad out of order as I added the windows layer while I was still working on the highlights and the shadows layer and shading the car. Alright, so let's start by creating a new layer down in the bottom right corner of the layers palette and double click layer 8, and that brings up this dialog box where we can select a new color for the layer because black just won't do. So let's change that to cyan and rename this layer Windows. Now I'm going to enlarge my Pathfinder dialog box. To bring this up, just go to Window at the top of your screen and select Pathfinder. We are only going to be using the shape modes at the top of this dialog box. There are 4 of them. Unite, Minus Front, Intersect, and Exclude. We're really just going to be using Minus Front. If you hover over your choice, Adobe will tell you what it does. So feel free to do that with the Pathfinders and play around with them. I'm just going to finish drawing the second shape around the window trim. So this darker area is going to represent the black window trim on the car. I'm going to use the minus front feature on the Pathfinder dialog box to essentially cut out the windows from this shape I'm using for the trim piece. So this way I don't have to have several shapes on top of one another to create this look. I can simplify it into one shape basically. Okay, let's trace out this rear window. We've had plenty of experience doing this by now. So once that is drawn, I'm going to go up to my layers palette. Let's just adjust that there. So let's go up to the layers palette and select the shape you just drew and the one directly below it. So both shapes are selected. Then I'm going to come down to my Pathfinder dialog box and click Minus Front. This removes the shape you just drew. Okay. Now let's draw the next window. By the way, it's very important that with the minus front feature in the Pathfinder dialog box, that the shape you are removing be directly on top of the other shape. Otherwise, it just simply won't work. Both shapes must also be selected or it won't work. I'm going to imagine where the window would be behind this side mirror. There's no need to trace around the mirror at this point because we will be drawing it later and we have that layer can live on top of the windows layer essentially. So one more time, select both shapes. You can do this in the layers palette by holding down Shift and click directly below the cyan dialog box. So hold Shift, click there. And there is the final shape for the window trim. Now you have one shape in your layers palette instead of 4. This will now be called a compound path and no longer a path in the layers palette. So I'm just going to draw one more rough shape to place below the trim. This will represent the glass. In this particular instance, I'm not drawing any interior. I can't see it due to the reflections in the image. So I usually draw a silhouette of the seats and possibly other windows if I can see them, but in this particular instance, I can't, so we're just gonna murder out the windows. All right. Now let's move over to the windshield. And this will only consist of a few paths. Keep it really, really simple. We will have the main windshield and then these 2 trim pieces on either side. There's no need to overcomplicate it. Okay, so now for the fun part. This is what really is going to give that illusion of glass. We're going to draw the reflection. Remember those gradients that we used in the last episode? So we're going to do the same thing here. In fact, this is where I started using this, and I just recently started adding the same effect to the body panels. So there are many ways to do reflections, and I encourage you to find your own style. This is how I'm doing mine right now. The formula I've been using is white on both sides of the gradient with one side's opacity set to 0. I feel it gives it a more realistic effect. So I need this shape to live on top of the shape I'm using for the glass. So I will come in a bit close, and using my direct selection tool, I will customize the shape to line up exactly over the glass and not the trim pieces. Those aren't reflective anyways. So I just want to add the reflection to the glass. Now let's go over to the side windows. We'll draw another shape, and we'll place this below the trim piece we drew at the beginning of this episode. This is a perfect example of why naming your layers and keeping them separate from other parts of the illustration is so important. By the end of this, there are hundreds, if not thousands of paths. So breaking them out into easy to understand layers is so very important. Plus, no one wants to be scrolling through their layers palette forever looking for a specific path. Breaking out into layers saves lots and lots of time. And it also helps when you go back and edit specific parts of your illustration. I mean, I do it all the time, and it's good practice. You should be a perfectionist, especially when you're doing this for a client. In the next episode, we're going to draw the grille. This will get us one step closer to having this illustration look more like a real car. So stay tuned. And if you're interested in more Illustrator CC tutorials and other car-related nonsense, then please consider subscribing. If you like this video, please give me a big thumbs up. It really does help. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.